Well, hello and welcome, folks. Welcome back to the Money Wisdom Podcast, powered by Johnson Brunetti. I'm Nick Colantuno. I'm a certified financial planner up here in our Boston, Massachusetts offices. Joined as always by my co-host, Jake Dozer, down in Connecticut. Jake, good to see you. How you doing?
I'm well, Nick. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Glad to be back. Yeah. We've got a fantastic topic today. It's all about the 5 must-know numbers before you retire. You don't want to be thinking about this stuff after you retire. We call that scrambling, and we don't like scrambling. So let's get into it, Jake. 5 must-know numbers before you retire. I'll start with the first one. You have to know your expenses. I can't overestimate this or overstate this. I'm always shocked when we have these meetings. People come in, I ask them what their budget. I ask them plain and simply, how much does it cost you to live your life each month? And it's a deer in headlights. And it's like, come on, that's the first number to know. We need to know what your life costs. And we also need to be mindful of the fact that the world we live in is just getting more and more and more and more expensive every single day. The idea of inflation. So knowing not just your monthly expenses, like how much you're putting on the credit card, how much it costs to heat the house or lease your cars or, maintain the property, but also the fun stuff. You don't want to retire and then all of a sudden not be budgeting for traveling or gifting or, other just expenses that you might have. So, how are you, Jake, helping your clients with this idea of budgeting? Because I know it can be daunting, but what advice are you giving people when it comes to coming up with the budget?
You're exactly right, Nick, in that a lot of folks come in and have no idea, or the classic answer of too much, ha ha ha, comes up. and that's fine as a starting place, but it can't be the end place. So know that if our job as financial planners is to craft a plan where we can say we feel that you can afford to retire, you want to make sure that good data is going in, because if good data isn't going into that plan, bad data is going to come out. Bad data in, bad data out. And so we want to know. I don't want to just know what your bills are. I want to know, what does it cost for you to live your life on a given month or year? I want to know about the fun stuff and the fixed expenses and the expenses that pop up every once in a while. I want to know, what are the large purchases that you see on the horizon over the next 5 years. It doesn't mean that while getting that information seems intimidating, it doesn't need to be. It provides clarity. You're going to come back and you're going to be like, whoa, I'm spending more money than I thought I was every month. But that's okay. It's more important at this juncture to know how much you're spending than it is to not be honest with yourself, so that we can have a target that we're shooting for. Just think of it this way, is if I'm sitting at a blackjack table, I don't gamble, but if I was, I want a full deck of cards in my hand. I don't want a half a deck, because I have no idea what's going on with the rest of the deck of cards. And if we can't start with the end in mind, which is how much do I need to create an income for you every month, I don't know where to begin. And I can't therefore choose what investments are right for you, because I don't know what type of return you need to generate in order to live your life, right? So recognize that good planning starts with good information. And that is so critical as monthly annual expenses.
To keep it simple, I would say figure out what your housing expenses are, mortgage, real estate taxes, oil and gas, compartmentalize that piece of life. Figure out the other stuff, the insurances, anything that you're not really putting on a credit card. And then last, I would just say, examine the credit card statement, see where your money is going each and every month. And if you're one of those people who just, puts money on debit cards or cash, a lot of the institutions out there, whether it's your bank or your credit card company, they'll help you sort of segment things out when you look at the statement and say, okay, this is on average how much money is going to food. This is how much is going to entertainment. This is how much is going to utilities or shopping. So just examine those statements, folks. It's a really good and easy way to start. The other thing we need to know, aside from what it costs to live your life, well, what's coming in the door? What are those expected sources of income? And for most clients in retirement, the fixed sources of income are things as simple as Social Security, maybe pensions, maybe rental income, any type of annuity or something that you have that's paying guaranteed income. Figure out what is coming in the door, and then ask yourself how those numbers could change. So what we're really getting at here, Jake, as you're aware, is, we want to know the difference between what's coming in and what's going out, right? So it's important for us to say, okay, what does life cost? And then what sort of foundation from an income standpoint do you have in order to start living that life?
That's right. So we want to know guaranteed income sources now. What are you getting from your W-2? What is your significant other getting? We want to know, what other income do you have now? Are you receiving rental income? Do you have a pension that is on presently? Is there some sort of alimony agreement? Do you have a side hustle? What's that income coming in? And then we want to forecast in the future, what will the guaranteed income streams be? Do you have an annuity that'll pay you a guaranteed lifetime income benefit? Do you have a pension in the future that will activate? We want to know what will Social Security be for you. We want to see the statement so we can help you figure out when to optimize taking Social Security. And then the difference, of course, between your expenses and your monthly guaranteed income is how much we need to generate from your investments. So it seems basic, but if we don't start with the basic foundational elements, we're shooting totally in the dark.
Yep, you got it. And that's a good segue into the third number that you must know. Well, you got to know what you're working with. And that's where we're getting into retirement savings, investment balances, all these different buckets of money, if you will, that you've worked so hard to accumulate over your working years. The old saying is you save money for a rainy day. And I often say, retirement is, you hate to put it this way, the rainy day. It's not. For our clients, retirement is the sunny days, but they're taking money out of those accounts, right? The rainy day funds. So this is where we're looking at all your various accounts, the IRAs, the 401ks, the brokerage accounts, anything that you have in checking, savings, CDs. It's knowing, again, what's coming in, what's going out, and what you have at your disposal to make up that difference. And of course, as financial planners, our objective with the savings and with the investment accounts, we want to keep pace with inflation. We want to make sure that whatever investment approach, wherever there is risk in those accounts, we want that risk to be appropriate with the comfort level that you have with risk. And again, we also want to create well-written and defined plans for generating that monthly income. Oftentimes, we're taking this monthly income out of accounts where our clients have never paid taxes on that money before. So part of our job as advisors and as planners is to make sure that we're able to replace that paycheck, but do it in the most tax efficient way possible. And, if you have different buckets across different taxable worlds, whether it's brokerage money or Roth accounts or the traditional IRA or the tax deferred retirement accounts, you need to know that however you're getting that money is being done in the most tax efficient way. So it's really all about having a plan for growth, a plan for safety, but most importantly, a plan for income, especially in this phase of life where you're not necessarily putting money in those accounts anymore. So Jake, why don't you expand upon that a little bit as far as the planning, the income planning that you're doing for your clients?
That is integral and foundational to the retirement planning process, is income planning. When someone comes in for a complimentary consultation with Johnson Bernetti, any of our advisors, the core and first work that we have to do is an income analysis. That is to say, when we subtract your monthly expense, or we subtract out your monthly expenses from the guaranteed income you have, how much of that deficit exists? So if you spend $7,000 a month and you're bringing in $4,000 a month of guaranteed income in retirement, you have a $3,000 a month deficit. Where's that going to come from? It's going to come from your investments or you keeping working. So we have to answer the question, is the amount of money you've saved enough to fuel that $3,000 a month deficit every month for the rest of your life? What if one of you passes away? Will it be enough to fuel, when you lose some of that guaranteed income, the differential to the survivor? What if there's someone who's like an adult parent or a child who's dependent upon you? Isn't enough for them? So that's the first step, is the differential or deficit that you have in your budget going to be fueled by the assets that you have? Part B to that is, and this is an episode for another day, is, are the investments that you've chosen sufficiently set up to be able to create that income in great environments and in bad environments, such as the stock market going down, right? So everyone loves the gravy train when the market's up. but no one loves it when it's down. But the problem is Eversource still sends their electricity bill to you when the S&P's down. So where are we going to get that income in the bad years? So first, notice it starts with income planning. Everyone wants to ask us, what's the hot stock or fund that you should buy? No, that doesn't matter. What matters is first, can you have enough money to retire, and are you retiring on the right terms? Once we decide what your retirement income looks like, now we can choose the investments to fuel that income need, right? So it starts first with planning, and then the investments, that's the exciting part, but that's the part that fuels the income, not the other way around.
Yeah, most often it is the case where people enter retirement and there is a discrepancy, right? There's a deficit, a cash flow deficit. And for most people, it's the first time in their life that that's been the case, right? They've always been working. There's been more money coming in than what has been going out. And that's how you've been able to save. So you go from a world where you're saving to a world where now you're no longer a saver, you're a spender. So really making sure that deficit is being met. And then the other thing, just when it comes to inflation, the cost, I should say, inflation tends to be a greater rate than the cost of living adjustments that you're getting on your fixed income streams like Social Security.
That's right.
Social Security might give you a 2 or 3% raise every year, but the world we live in gets 7% more expensive. So that deficit, in theory, could be getting bigger and bigger and bigger every single year. And that's, again, from an investment standpoint, where we really have to know that you've got a portion of your money designed to be able to keep pace with that. There is nowhere else where we see greater inflation than topic number 4, which is where we're ultimately going to be highlighting healthcare costs in retirement. So one of the must-know numbers is really just around the healthcare, estimating what healthcare could cost. And there's a lot of different forms of healthcare costs, starting, as basic as your Medicare premiums, right? What it costs you to insure for what ifs, out-of-pocket costs that might be associated with prescription drugs or copays or things along those lines. And then, of course, the unfortunate scenario can be for care that you might need later on in life, long-term care planning, whether it's having a home health aide come in and administer medications or cook or clean or, help you bathe or dress a couple days a week, to maybe more of an assisted living facility where you're no longer living in your home, you're living in a facility, right? Obviously, the costs with that type of care is significantly more expensive than having someone come to you. And then, of course, end of life care, nursing home, hospice, even some sort of longer drawn, memory care units for Alzheimer's, dementia. They actually did a study and they said that a 65-year-old person who finds themselves healthy today should budget somewhere between $300,000 and $400,000 for the remainder of their life towards healthcare. That is a big, big number. I was almost shocked to see it, Jake, but I'm sure, obviously we've both got experience in seeing where money goes for our clients when it's not going towards the fun stuff. And that's just the unfortunate part about, kind of what can happen later on in life.
Yeah, we have to articulate a few things in that space. We have to articulate, if we know that $300,000 to $400,000 is the average cost of healthcare in retirement, we have to ascertain, can we fully set that money aside for care and still maintain your lifestyle? If we can't, can you afford to buy insurance to pay for those things? And how do we marry these two things together, right? So oftentimes the biggest obstacle people feel between them retiring early before 65 and retiring at 65 is the cost of health insurance before that time period. And so we have to be able to help people navigate through, how can we control what type of income you have and the taxation thereof to make sure that you can keep your healthcare premium low and still maintain the lifestyle that you want. So there's a lot of levers, a lot of moving pieces here, So pre-65, it's healthcare through maybe accesshealthct.com if you're in Connecticut, or whatever the system is in your state. And then 65 onward, it's Medicare premium. Do we choose the Medicare Advantage plan? Do we do original Medicare? What type of supplements do we have? Then it's when you're in your maybe mid 70s and on, it's home health care, assisted living, nursing homes, memory wards, It's making sure that your estate planning documents are designed appropriately. So there's a moving target, and all of these different stages of life call for unique approaches to make sure that you can find the balance between living the life you want and also making sure that you don't leave a financial burden to others regarding your medical.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Jake. I think this is a good time to offer all of our viewers, all of our listeners, our Money Map book. This is our best-selling book, if you will, although we don't sell it. But it's our best book, and really because it shines light on who we are as a firm, our philosophy when it comes to the financial planning that we're doing for folks in your exact phase of life. So, folks, text the word MAP, MAP. Text it to us at 800-757-0436. We'll get you out the Money Map book. Again, it's going to tell you about all the things that you need to be thinking about when it comes to retiring, including expounding upon these 5 must-know numbers. So let's get into our last topic here. Number 5, it's simply your withdrawal rate, right? We talked about knowing what's coming in, what's going out, what you have to make up that difference. But really how, based on market conditions, based on inflation, based on life expectancy, based on your lifestyle, how are we going to be coming up with that income? And how is that income going to change for better or for worse over the course of your life? So it's not just knowing the number. Okay, I have a $3,000 a month deficit. I need $3,000 a month. Well, is that before tax? Is that after tax? Is it coming from a brokerage account where you're going to be paying taxes along the way on interest and dividends? Is it coming from a Roth where there's no taxes? Or are you taking that money out of an IRA where we're going to have to withhold not just state tax, but also federal tax? And if it's in an IRA, maybe that IRA is going up and down every day, and it's all good and well when the market's going up and you're capturing gains and you're taking risk off the table. But what if the market's going the other way? I always use the analogy, Jake, you never want to catch a falling knife. You never want to be taking money out of accounts that are falling in value at the same time. And obviously, our philosophy as far as managing money, you want different buckets doing different things. And this is where, if you do not have a well-written plan as far as where you're going to go to get your hands on the money that you need when you need it, well, folks, I hate to break it to you, maybe you don't have as good of a plan as you thought you did. So that's really where the value of our planning comes into play. Jake, when it comes to withdrawal rates, what are you telling clients about? Okay, I'm calling you today, for example. The market's at all-time highs, and I need to get my hands on some money. What are you telling your clients?
We're thinking about a few things. We're thinking about longevity. What does longevity look like in your family? Generally, we try to plan on folks not running out before they're age 90. That might leave extra years. That might mean that you might have money at the end of your life, but that's a lot better than having life at the end of your money. But if you find that longevity is even longer in your life, we need to be thinking about that and shaping the income. We need to have a conversation with how important is it for you to spend willy-nilly versus having a legacy that you leave. Which of those priorities are more important to you? Is the legacy not important to you at all? Well, if that's the case, we can increase your spending because we're less concerned about you running out or running out with extra. Is legacy important to you and you want to make sure that you're balancing that with your current enjoyment? Well, let's think through that as well. And then we're also talking about the order in which you withdraw. So which accounts are you tapping first? Social Security, pensions, safe investments, brokerage accounts, Roth IRAs, traditional IRAs. And we're, as Nick mentioned, trying to make sure that you withdraw in the order that saves you the most long-term taxes. That's where tax planning and income planning intersect, is not how do I save you taxes today, but rather between now and the time you pass away, how do you pay the least to Uncle Sam? I don't care if you write 10 checks of $1,000 or one check of $10,000. Either way, it results in the same amount of taxes. But if we can write more to Uncle Sam now and a lot less long-term, that's a win, or vice versa, right? The goal is the least amount to Uncle Sam, the most to you and your loved ones or the organizations and causes you care about, in whatever order that is. So there's a lot of moving pieces here. And as Nick mentioned, you're not just going to withdraw from your investments. You have to decide which fund to sell based on what the market's doing, which one's going to create the best short and long-term benefit to you. So income planning is really integral to this retirement planning phase and shaping your investments, not just based on how you want to feel about risk, not just based on how it feels to be excited about your investment returns, but rather what type of return do you need in order to make your plan work? Always starting with a plan and working backwards from there.
Yep. You hit the nail on the head. That's very well said. So again, 5 must-know numbers, folks, before you retire. Know your monthly and annual expenses. Know what your sources of income are and what that income equates to. On the first of every month, just waking up. Know what you have working for you in the background, right? The retirement accounts, the savings, the investment accounts. Have a ballpark figure for what it's going to cost for healthcare. Right? If you're very healthy and you've never had really any healthcare concerns and you don't have, pre-existing conditions, or you've got A+, family history, obviously the healthcare assumptions you can use are going to be different than someone else, who might not have as good of a healthcare history. So make sure you estimate those costs and then figure out exactly what that withdrawal rate is before taxes, after taxes, what it means as far as other expenses that you might be on the hook for, really as far as Medicare premiums or other tax rates that can be impacted based on the amount of income that you have. So obviously, folks, there's a lot of moving parts here, and this is why we do what we do. So again, we want to offer everyone our Money Map book. Text the word MAP to 800-757-0436. We'll get that right out to you today. And folks, we appreciate it. We appreciate you joining us. I know I'm speaking for myself. I'll speak for you here, Jake. We really appreciate the faith and trust that you put in us here at Johnson Brunetti. We appreciate the viewership and the listenership on our Money Wisdom podcast. And we thank you as always for being with us. So we'll see you next time.
Johnson Brunetti is a marketing name for the businesses of JB Capital and JN Financial. Investment advisory services offered through JB Capital LLC. Insurance products offered through JN Financial LLC.